Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Glacial Geek Deep Thoughts, Thin Coats with me, Phil, the Glacial Geek. Today, we are going to be talking about how to be a better gamer and hobbyist. What you can do, what steps you can take to kind of enhance this hobby that we do for yourself and also others around you, just to enhance the whole experience from your own personal enjoyment of it to how you interact and participate out in public, out in the local gaming store, either at tournaments or just in friendly pickup games. Just ways that we can kind of get better as gamers and as hobbyists to really take advantage fully of what it is that this hobby provides. While I'm talking about that, I'm going to continue working on my my Deathwatch stuff here. It's coming along. I've been painting a bunch of the silver stuff. I noticed I forgot a little bit of these parts here, but it's coming along. I'm almost done with the silver. Then I'm going to move on to another color, and then once I get all of them done, I'll show you guys. I'm sure I'll put up pictures eventually. It takes a little while. I've been really super busy with work, so most of my hobby time has just been whatever I've been able to do while doing these. So you've kind of really followed along most of what my progress just in general has been. So anyway, so going into the topic, how to be a better gamer. I know that sounds a little, highfalutin of me that I know how to be a better gamer. And, understand that this always comes with a grain of salt. This is just my opinion on what you can do. It's worked for me. It's worked for what I've seen from other people. And I think that generally these are just some good things to keep in mind on how to really enjoy what it is that we do to the full extent. Take advantage of everything that there is. So, I think the first thing is understand exactly what it is that we do here. What this is. This isn't just a board game. This isn't just a set of literature. There's a whole universe that this encompasses. And it encompasses it in a way that other intellectual property subjects don't really encompass. There's a lot to consume out there if you're a fan of Star Wars, for instance. But they don't have the real all-encompassing aspect of it that we do when it comes to the gaming and hobbying aspect. There's no Star Wars. Well, I guess there is. There's X-Wing now. You could do that. But it's more like you purchase. I know some people paint them, but most of them you just purchase and you go with the paint job that it came with and you play the game. And that's more of it seems like it's like a collectible board game more so than it is what we do here with involved with this. Because, you purchase these, you build them and you paint them and you make them very personal. And those are aspects I will get into later in this topic. But because it's so all-encompassing, understanding that is kind of the first step to becoming a better gamer. Understand that there's a lot to being a fan of Warhammer and being a person who engages in the hobby than most other intellectual properties that you're going to be involved with. And as a nerd and as a geek, I know that there's a lot of really encompassing fandoms that you can be a part of, but this has all of those. It has aspects of all of that. So it has video games. You've got comic books. You've got regular books. You've got You've got games. Regular board games, even collectible card games, or I guess living card games, not really collectible card games. You've got all of those aspects that you can see in other fandoms, plus the actual game itself. And the actual game itself can be very, very consuming. There's a lot of time and money spent in this hobby. And I think that's a big reason why it's worth considering how it is that what you do with it. You know what I mean? And understand what it is that you do with it. Because unlike other fandoms, we put so much into this, so much time, effort, and money that you really want you want it to bear fruit. You want it to be worth something. Because at the end, if you're a big fan of anything else and a bad movie comes out, it was 2 hours of your time and you can move on. You know what I mean? Or I guess the Star Wars, you have to wait another 30 years till something else comes out. But in reality, you just wait for the next movie, the next episode, the next book, whatever it is to come out. and you can move on. But with this, if you start having bad games and you start having bad times at the hobby table, it's a lot of time and effort that you've put in to get to the point that it feels like you want that to work out for you. You want that to be of value. So understanding the fact that this is different than most other fandoms, for that simple fact that we invest so much of ourselves into this, our free time, our money, our minds, a whole lot into this, and there's other people that dedicate their lives to other fandoms, and that's true, that's fair enough, but you don't have to in order to really appreciate those fandoms. For this, there is a certain level of dedication to this that's required in order to enjoy it on any level, let alone on a closer, deeper level. So, with that in mind, you then have to understand, then going forward, what are some ways that you can better enjoy yourself and bear better fruit for the efforts that you put into this hobby. I think the first thing is learn a little bit about the universe that we're working in. Pick up a book. Read the fluff in that codex that you have, that no longer the rules are going to be worth it once 8th edition comes along, but read what's the fluff in there. Read the backstory of the chapter or the army or the race that you're playing, and get to understand it a bit better. You know what I mean? There's 30 years worth of fluff in these that's been developed over years, been told in many, many stories, that's been parsed out by some of the best writers in science fiction genre out there, and it's gone through many iterations and many different variations, to the point that now it's a very detailed and very complex world, and or universe, I guess, an entire universe that it's involved with. And to better understand that is to better understand this game. You know what I mean? Because otherwise you just have a bunch of little plastic men on the table, and it's nothing else. You know what I mean? At that point, it's basically just chess. Which, if that's all you want to do with it, that's fine. But might I suggest picking up chess at that point? You know what I mean? Because you're never going to have perfect parity with armies in this game, because there's different units, there's different rules, there's different forces, they all different. And that's the beauty of this game versus chess. That's what this game brings to the table that chess doesn't. So if all you're looking at this is as a game, then perhaps if you don't understand everything that goes along with it, all of these different fluff reasons, the fluff things, the stories that have been developed, then you're not truly embracing what this brings to the table versus anything else. So that's the first thing, is understand this. If you play Space Wolves, go out and buy one of the many novels about Space Wolves out there so that you can better understand what's going on with your chapter. You know what I mean? Read the fluff part at the beginning of your codex. It tells you a good backstory and history of your chapter, so you can better understand what your guys have gone through. You know what I mean? And I know that, they're not real, but that doesn't mean that you can't imagine them to be real. That's the whole point of this, is an exercise in imagination to explore an avenue that we really, truly enjoy. So, yeah, that would be my first suggestion, is get a better understanding. You know what I mean? And if you don't want to read, then go to one of the many YouTube channels that talk about lore. Listen to a podcast that talks about lore. Mob Rules, for instance. We have many of the episodes that we kind of go into the history of the Warhammer 40,000 universe. I think as of recording this, the most recent one, we kind of went into the history of Armageddon, talking about Shadow Wars Armageddon, but going into the history of that planet and the stories that kind of come out of it. So you don't even have to read. At that point, you can just put it on, listen to it while you hobby, and while you paint or build, and sit back and let some other nerds do the hard work of actually reading words. Because what am I, nerd? I'm not going to read. So go out there and let someone else tell you about it and listen to it, Or if you just want a quick synopsis, just to give a little bit of a flavor to what it is that you're doing, go check out one of the many websites. There's 40K wikis. There's, the different various boards and stuff that you can go on to. And there's a whole bunch of information on there, out there on the interwebs, on dem interwebs, about what it is and about this universe of ours that we play in, and the worlds and the races and the armies that we bring to life on the tabletop. You know, if you have a better understanding of what's going on, I'm not saying you have to go out and name every single one of your models. I don't do that. But just have a better understanding, and it makes it a bit more real. You know, and not real in the sense that you think they're going to come alive, but it makes it more visceral. You know what I mean? They're no longer just meeples on a board game. Now they suddenly have a backstory. You understand the reasons behind why an army might be going to battle against them. That's why in all of my battle reports that I put out, I put that little bit of narrative. There's not a whole lot that goes into that. Most of the time it's like, all right, I'm going to bring this army, you bring that army. We set them up on the table, and right before we start filming, I start talking about, so what's the story? What do we got going on here? You know, why are these two forces going to be battling it out today? And you just, if you have a better understanding of the history of what's gone on, you can flesh that out a little bit better. You know what I mean? And you can understand. It's like, so if I suddenly am playing against, if my Dark Angels are playing against some Space Wolves, I know that there's a history between those two chapters. That there's, you know, back when they were even legions, there was history between the two. You know, and there's some bad blood that can reignite very easily and makes for a really cool story when they go to battle out on the tabletop there. Otherwise, you just have, you know, my meeples face off against your meeples and you roll some dice. And it's like, yeah, that could be fun, but it's way more fun if you think about it with a little bit of narrative. And that doesn't have to dictate your list. If you just want to bring the most hardcore lists imaginable, that's fine. But when you put them on the table, maybe think about them a little bit, you know, a little bit differently. So if suddenly your White Scars double Demi Company Gladius force that you've got coming out there, it's probably going to kick some ass. But you could tell the story. Maybe they're out on a crusade through a certain system, trying to purge a series of planets of Chaos invaders or of Xenos invaders, and they've been sent in force to take back this system that's been overrun by the enemy. You know what I mean? Or maybe there's maybe if you're playing against another Space Marine player, you know, maybe there's some bad blood that's been going on, and they got sent out to put an end to the disagreements once and for all, so that they can finally move on. You know, little bits and pieces that you get to put together based upon your knowledge then of the history of your army and of the history of the 40K universe. You know, and I just think it adds and enhances and honestly makes a big difference on why we do what we do versus going off and doing anything else. You know what I mean? It's a really rich environment that 40K has developed, and that's why that's why I play it, and I think that's why a lot of people play it, is because of the history in the world. And you see a lot of other people who don't play, but they get involved because of that rich history. So if you want to have a better understanding of what it is that your models are and what it is that your models are doing, taking a little bit of time and effort to kind of understand that really enhances the game. You know what I mean? It makes it better. It makes it more fun to field an army. It doesn't mean that you have to go out there and become super fluff bunnies, but it does enhance it for even the most competitive players to have a little bit of understanding of what it is that your army is that you're fielding there. So that would be my first bit of advice on how to be a better Warhammerist, or however you want to talk about it, to enhance this hobby for yourself, is get an understanding of the lore and the backstory of what it is that this system entails, because it's out there and it's really strong and it's really good. A lot of those novels are fantastic, and you don't have to read every single novel. I'm not suggesting that you read everything that Black Library put out, but just pick up the things that, you know, might pose a little bit of interest. You know, I was interested in Inquisitor, so I picked up Eisenhorn. It's a fantastic read. I don't have an inquisitorial force, thinking about it, but I don't have an inquisitorial force. But the books were really fantastic, and they fleshed it out, and you get a better understanding of the world and the universe that they're in, and the realities that the 41st millennium entail. You know, I don't have a guard army, but I've been reading the Gaunt's Ghost books, and they're fantastic. You know, you get a better understanding of what it's like to be an Astra Militarum regiment being sent to these planets to face innumerable odds with very little expectation of them surviving, And the ones who do become super battle hardened, and they fight from planet to planet, system to system, really only fighting for their brother in arms next to them. With an understanding of fighting for the Emperor, but in the end, they have more of a dedication to that guy standing next to him that's flown with them across the entire galaxy to go face a random insurgency than they do to the general leading these campaigns. And I think that's just kind of interesting. It puts a little bit of a fresh take on and a little bit of a fresh understanding of come on, get back here. A fresh understanding of what these armies are, and makes them a little bit more, because they're not just meeples. Ugh, dog hair. They're not just meeples. They're not just faceless little things. They represent kind of a developed history that's been gone on over 30 years now. So, that would be my first suggestion. Go out and understand that a bit better. The next thing I would suggest is know your army. I know that sounds kind of silly and simple, but knowing your army is going to enhance your ability to play and also enhance your enjoyment of the game. So read over every single unit that's in your codex. Not just the ones on that list that you picked up off the internet, every single unit. So that you know what is available to your army. That bare simple fact of knowing what your army can possibly ever do is really going to enhance your ability to build lists. It's going to enhance your ability to play. It's going to enhance your ability to face off against opponents, because you'll know what you can do. And you'll know what your models can do. And understand that there are more units in the Space Marine Codex than just Grav Cannon Marines. You know what I mean? And there are more units in the Dark Angels Codex than Black Knights. There are more units in the Tau Codex than Riptides. There are more units in the Eldar Codex than just Scat Bikes. Those are really strong units. Those are really effective units and powerful units. And they may end up being the units that you play consistently from game to game, but they aren't the only ones that are there. And knowing what else is there, so check out the Kroot if you're looking at, or check out, check out the Scouts, check out the Dreadnoughts if you've got a Dark Angel Codex. These are things that you probably aren't going to field as often, but they're there, and you can understand and see what the special rules that they have. When you look at it and you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe I can use those scouts to bring in my reserves a bit better. Oh, wait, this 75-point bikers unit actually has teleport homers? Well, that's cool. I wanted to drop in my Terminators, but I was afraid that I was going to mishap, and that would end up leaving me in a bad place. But maybe if I throw in a 75-point biker unit, shoot them up the board, jink it a little bit so that they survive. And suddenly now my Terminators can go in exactly where I want them to. And that's awesome, And it gives you the ability to then know what your army can do and the kind of how they work together and how they do different various things. And I think that understanding what is available to you in those codexes is going to help you understand. It doesn't mean that that you're going to use every single unit, I'm sure there are a lot of units that I've never actually used in my codexes. But I know that they're there, and I know what they can do. So if I'm sitting back and I'm like, well, you know what? I've been playing my friend's list consistently now for a little while, and I'm getting my butt kicked because of, I don't know, I just can't get through his armor. You know what I mean? So now I know, by looking at my codexes and the Dark Angels, well, I have access to grav guns. Those are really good at getting through armor. You know what I mean? Or maybe it's that his army is really good at, in the beginning of the early game, infiltrating and taking, controlling the field, so that even before I've been able to do anything, he has a command over what is going to be going on and how different units are going to be able to move on that field. So I look into it and it's like, wow, my scouts are 55 points for a squad, and then I can just infiltrate them and then hold them, and I can hold them throughout the field so that I can get a little bit of early game control over what's going on. And I could do it as a counter to my opponent at that point because I know what they do. So even if I'm usually just running, a whole bunch of bikes, which I don't necessarily do, but if you're just using a whole bunch of bikes, if you know what those scouts can do, you can then throw together a quick CAD, and now you've got a couple scout squads out there that are going to be able to help you with controlling the field a bit better, so you're not left completely out in the open. You know what I mean? So knowing all of your units are going to be helpful. Also, in the middle of a game, if you know what your units can do by having a better understanding of your codex and a better understanding of your army, you're going to spend less time looking things up in a book, and it's going to flow better, and it's going to be more enjoyable. Just flat out, more enjoyable. Those games are going to be way more enjoyable if you're not sticking your nose in a book every 3 seconds trying to figure out what your units do. If you know what they do and you can consistently kind of play the game without having to look things up, the game flows and is a lot more fun that way. So, know your codex, know your army, and more specifically, know any list that you're going to be bringing. Because if you know what they can do, you can use them better, and you can utilize your forces better, and you can play with them better on the table. And it's going to make for a more enjoyable game for you. It's going to make a more enjoyable game for your opponents. And it's going to make a more enjoyable just experience in general. The next bit of advice that I will give is not everyone necessarily needs this advice. There's a lot of people that this is their strongest emphasis, but paint a model. Paint your army. I'm not one of those people that refuses to play with an unpainted model. I've gone to many a tournament with some unpainted models. But playing with painted models is way more enjoyable than playing with unpainted models. I know it sounds silly. I know it's just a game. What does painting have to do with anything? But once you've played with a painted army, you're not going to want to go back. Playing with a painted army is a lot of fun. It makes it more real. It feels like it comes alive a bit more. It feels like it's a lot more fun seeing two painted armies out on the table. And you don't have to paint them super well. You don't need to be a Golden Demon winning painter in order to bring together to put together a painted army. Even just a basic 3-color minimum paint job is going to enhance the game for you. It's really going to do it. It's really going to make it a lot more fun. And trust me, once you start, you're not going to want to go back. You're going to want to play with painted armies. And when you have 2 painted armies on a table, it looks cooler and it's a lot more fun because it looks cooler. You know what I mean? It's also easier to differentiate different units and different models if they're painted. Even if they're painted similarly, for whatever reason, I have a lot easier time picking out different units when they're painted than I can if they're just the gray hordes. It really enhances your ability to pick it out. It also seriously enhances your ability to pick out different weapons. If you see a bolter in a guy's hands versus a flamer in a guy's hands, it looks a lot different when they're painted than when they're just, gray plastic. So, that would be, I would say paint an army. And I'm not saying that you have to go and you have to paint everything before you play it. I'm not one of those people that refuses to face opponents who don't have painted armies. To me, that doesn't seem necessary, and it seems like way more aggravation than it's worth. And I feel like if you've paid the money for your toys, you should be able to play with them. But taking the time and effort to go and paint an army is well worth it. Well worth it. And if you don't have the time, but you do have the money, say, you can go out and get a commission painter to paint you up an army. And playing with a painted army is fun. And as you paint, you get better. I'm going to show you, here's some of my earliest paint jobs when I was much younger. Look at those. That's ridiculous. My wife calls them my melty cow guys because they're super ridiculous. But I've now gotten much better at painting my guys. So here's my Eversur assassin. He's not going to win me a Golden Demon, but he's way better painted than my melty cow guy. And it's fun to play with a painted guy. it's fun to play with a painted army. And I play painted armies in my battle reports because when I was watching battle reports, I wanted to watch battle reports with painted armies. I didn't want to spend the time to watch 2 gray hordes face off. I couldn't really it didn't keep my attention. And as such, I knew I didn't want to put out content that I wouldn't want to watch myself. So that's why I made the decision that I would only play with painted armies on my channel, because it's more entertaining for the viewer. And I mean, that's what I'm trying to do here, right? I don't just make these videos for my own enjoyment. I make these videos because I want other people to enjoy them, and that's what I'm doing. So if you are watching a battle report, don't you enjoy watching a battle report with a painted army much better than you do watching a battle report with 2 gray armies facing off against each other? And there's a reason that you feel that way, because it's more entertaining. And when you're playing the game, sure, playing with a gray army is very different than watching a gray army, but if you can get both the enjoyment of playing the actual army and getting to see a painted army in front of you, then that's like double dipping in awesomeness. You actually get to enjoy and have fun with the game, and you get to see and marvel at cool painted armies. And as you paint more, you will get better. So don't let the fact that you're not a good painter, quote unquote, keep you from going out and painting anything. Just start. Because even a basically painted army is going to be more fun to play with than a gray horde. And from there you can get better, and you can paint better. You know what I mean? And just because you paint it now doesn't mean you can't paint it again later. You can just dip it in some and you can just soak it in some simple green. You can use some isopropyl alcohol and strip off that paint job in a couple of years when you get better, and start again and paint them again, and just kind of like cycle it through. As you get new units, you can paint more, and just keep going and until you suddenly have a fully painted army, and then you can make a better painted army. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the endless struggle when you're painting, is that you get better by the time you finish. So you're never really super satisfied with how their models come out. But I'm way more satisfied with my painted models than I am with my gray plastic hordes ever. So paint a model. And if you do that, it's really going to enhance the game. It's going to make you want to play more because you've spent a lot of time and effort making these models look good. It's going to encourage you to play more because you're going to want to get use out of them. You're going to want to see them on the battlefield, see them playing out. And it's going to make it come alive. It really will. I know it sounds silly, but it really makes a difference when you play with a fully painted army. It makes a difference in how you perceive it when you're playing the game. So, yeah, that's what I would say to make yourself a better gamer. Paint an army, and not just because that's the way you're supposed to do it, but because of the benefit that painting an army provides you. And it also gives you a little bit of, pride in your army at that point. You know what I mean? Everyone can go out and just bring a whole bunch of great plastic, but not everyone has a painted army. And if you have that painted army, it's going to enhance it. It's going to make it fun, and it's going to give you a reason to want to go out there and show off your hard work. So, yeah, that's the next thing I would say is paint your army. The next thing, drop the salt. Leave the salt for your French fries and drop the salt. Don't get into stupid arguments. Don't get angry. Don't get mad. Don't make fun of other people. Don't bully other people. Don't scream. Don't throw anything. Don't be a dick. Have fun. Because the more you have fun with this game, the more enjoyable it is. And the more people you're going to meet, the more friends you're going to make, and the better the experience is going to be. If you leave the salt at home, and you just leave it on your French fries at lunch, you'd be surprised at the amount of goodwill that's going to develop. I tend not to get salty. I'm not saying I'm perfect, and I'm not saying anyone has to be perfect, but if you make an effort not to be salty, it really enhances the hobby and creates a more entertaining, a more fun, and a more relaxed environment in which you can play and in which you can just enjoy this hobby. And leaving the salt at home makes for better community. Because no one wants to go and spend hours at a tournament if they're going to get yelled at. They just don't, because it's not worth it. You know? And in the end, it's like, what do you gain from yelling at them? Very little. Very little is ever gained by actually screaming and yelling at someone. All it does is create ill will, and it creates a situation where no one wins and no one ends up coming out on top. So leave the salt at home. Don't call someone an idiot because they said something on a Facebook group that you disliked. Don't call someone, don't laugh at someone because their paint job isn't as good as yours. Don't yell at someone because they decided that they wanted to bring a hardcore list versus, a list that perfectly follows the battle companies on Badab. Let people enjoy the hobby how they want to enjoy it, and you can enjoy the hobby how you want to enjoy it. And if you get into a screaming match with someone and you start calling each other names, it just makes people upset, and it does nothing to help you. And it doesn't add to anything. It doesn't add to anything. At the end of the day, if you win an internet argument, you know what you win? Absolutely nothing. No one gains anything by winning an internet argument. No one's ever gained anything by winning an internet argument. And no one's ever gained anything by screaming at each other in a game store. You know what I mean? If you think the opponent is doing stuff that's counter to the rules, either because they don't know them right or because you think they're actively trying to cheat, which, don't do that. Don't cheat. That should be rule number 1. I should have started with that. Don't cheat. It's just scummy, and winning a game is not worth it. But if you think your opponent's doing that, call someone over. You know what I mean? Or point it out to them. You don't have to scream and yell, you're an effing cheater, get out of my face, and flip the table. What you can say is, that's not how that works. That's not what the rules say. And you can look it up and show them the reality of what it is, and either they'll thank you because they didn't actually know it, or they won't. You know what I mean? And at that point, that person should take this advice and not be a jerk. And not be a dick, And yeah, you're going to run into people that are going to do that regardless, because not everyone is going to take my advice. More the worse to their decision, but they will be, But if you set a precedent and don't bring the salt, you'd be surprised at how much that helps in enhancing your enjoyment of the game. Because if you're not worried about having an argument with everyone every 3 seconds, you can sit back and actually enjoy what it is that this game provides. Because I don't think anyone decided to start doing this because they liked to fight on the internet. Because if you wanted to do that, there's a lot cheaper and a lot more vicious places to do that than in the 40K universe. So if you want to just go out there and have our argument on the internet, I would suggest finding a different hobby. One that's going to be cheaper for you in the long run, and one that's going to be, that's not going to ruin my hobby for me. Because I would like to be able to go onto a Facebook page and discuss the new coming edition without having people scream and yell because it's, because of what's been going on and back and forth, and it just creates a situation where no one's actually enjoying themselves. The more yelling you have, the less enjoyment that's being had. And I think that basic fact should dictate what a lot of people do. In the end, if it's not enhancing your enjoyment, don't do it. Just don't do it. If screaming, does being right on the internet enhance your enjoyment of this game? No. I can guarantee you it doesn't. Have you ever walked away from an argument on the internet and gone, ha ha, I feel so much better for having told that random person in that random country that they were wrong, and, proved it by calling them an idiot and belittling them? No. No one's left a situation feeling better about that. So don't do it. Go on there, share the hobbying that you've done, talk about different situations, talk about rules questions. Yes, have all of that. And have an actual discussion. There's a ways of going about discussing things without having to scream and yell at each other. Because if you go into a situation and you just go, I think this is how this rule works. You know, other people might disagree. That's just the reality of what happens with this kind of game system, is that there's going to be disagreements, you know? And no one has to take your word to be gospel over another person's word. And they can express their opinion, you can express your opinion. But the second it degrades into name calling, it's done. Stop it. You know, go home. Go grow up. Because there's no need for name calling. There's no need for belittling. If someone has a different interpretation than you, then that's fine. You can discuss your reasons for why you believe it is. And just saying that's the way it is not an answer. That's not a reason. You know? Most people don't have a different opinion on a situation just because. They usually have a reason for why they feel it's a different way. And you can have a discussion about it. And you can go back and forth about it without getting into a screaming match about it. You know? Be an adult about it. Even if you're not an adult, be an adult. And be a bigger person. And have and have a discussion without devolving into screaming and calling each other names. Or calling each other stupid. Or calling each other cheater because you're trying to cheat the system by doing this. It's like, no, honestly, most of the time they're probably just have a different opinion on how things are supposed to work. You know what I mean? And there are going to be people out there that are going to troll and say things for that, but then just leave them alone. You know? You know what the best way to counter a troll is? Not engage them. Because the second you engage a troll, they won. That's exactly what they wanted, and they got it. But if you don't engage them and you just go about your day and ignore what they had to say, then they gained nothing from it, and they're left with nothing. You know? And when they're left with nothing, they're usually going to stop trying to shout their BS. Because at that point, what's the point? Why would they want to shout their BS if they're not actually gaining anything from it? So, yeah, don't be a dick. Don't be an ass, and be an adult, and treat it with respect. You know, talk to someone on the internet how you would want to be talked to. You know, so if you wouldn't want to be called an idiot by a random stranger on the internet, then don't call another random stranger on the internet an idiot. You know, it's the golden rule. It's the basic rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So if you don't want them calling you an idiot, don't call them an idiot. If you don't want them to say you're stupid for thinking a different way, then don't call them stupid for thinking a different way. If you wouldn't want them calling you names because you thought something was different than it was, then don't call someone else another name for thinking something was different than it actually was. The reality is that most people out there are honestly just asking questions and honestly just trying to understand what's going on with the game system. Especially with 7th edition, it was a very complex system, you know, and there were going to be disagreements. I had plenty of disagreements with my friends and with people that I've never actually met online, you know, and that's fine. You're allowed to have those kind of disagreements as long as you both treat the situation with respect and you treat each other with respect. And at the end of the day, you can leave either coming to an agreement or not, and that's the end of it. You know what I mean? You don't carry it on. You don't hold a grudge. You don't scream at them. You don't badmouth them. You don't belittle them. You just move on with your life. You know, because if you don't think it should be played that way, then don't play it that way, you know? Talk with your friends about it. And if your friends disagree with it, maybe you should do some thinking and figure that out, you know? Maybe there's a reason that everyone else in the gaming store disagrees with your opinion, you know? And you have to be open to that understanding that maybe you might be wrong. You know what I mean? As hard as it is to understand, not everyone can be perfect like me. And if you go into a situation thinking that there's a possibility I could be wrong, I think I'm right, I believe I'm right, this is why I believe I'm right, but I could be wrong, then you're going to leave it a lot happier. Because you're going to leave it with an understanding either which way that you got the right answer. You know? So if you're talking to someone and they say something that seems very persuasive, maybe that's right. You know what I mean? But if you go into it going, my way is the only way, and my way is the best way, then you're left with a situation where you're never going to learn. And you're always going to confirm your own bias that you are right. And you're not going to listen to arguments, you're not going to listen to facts, you're not going to listen to the reality of the situation. You're only going to listen and hear what you think, what you want to hear, to make it sound right to you, and make your opinion right. So if you leave that salt at home, if you just go into a situation as an adult, you're going to enhance the hobby, you're going to enjoy yourself more, you're going to be able to have better interactions on the internet, and you're just going to have fun. So that's what I would suggest for that. Let's see. What else? I would suggest that if you want to be a better player, practice. Practice, practice, practice. I know that's the same thing if you want to be better at anything else, but it holds true for 40K as well. You know, go out and play games. Don't just play games against your one friend who brings the same list all the time. Go out and play other lists. Go to a tournament. You know, don't go to a tournament to win. Go to a tournament to learn. Go to a tournament to experience. You know, because getting your butt kicked can be a very good learning experience in how to build or not build your army, or how to play or not play your army. You know, so if you go out to a game store and you see someone playing that army that you've heard is so OP, they're not even worth playing, give it a shot. Play their army. Play their Eldari army. You know, you might get your butt kicked and you might be like, well, that sucked. But next time that you go face them, I guarantee you're going to have a better base of knowledge to be able to play that game. And you're going to have you're not going to be as completely helpless as you were that first time you saw it. You know? Because that happens with every single game. Every single army I've faced, the first time I faced them, I've had trouble. Because I don't know how they play. And I don't know how they operate, and I don't know how they interact. So, that first game that I play, I usually throw away to being, you know, I throw away as a learning experience, and then I get better. So that the next time I face them, I end up playing better, and I end up doing better, because I've learned, and I've practiced, and I play a lot of games. You know? And I've gotten much better over the years. I used to get my butt handed to me on a regular basis. And now I can go into a tournament and reasonably expect to go at least 2 wins out of 3. You know, if not 3 wins out of 3 sometimes. And I don't bring the most hardcore list, you know. I don't bring the most broken lists. I bring good lists, but I bring lists that I've made myself, that I've come up with through my own trial and error, that I've tried through experimentation and through games that I've played. And it's because of practice, because I know what those units can do, and I know what those lists can do, because I've played them a lot, and I've played them consistently against a lot of different opponents, so I know how they interact with different armies. So that when someone plops their AdMech in front of me, I know what that AdMech can do, so that I know how to change my tactics to face them. Because I'm not going to play an AdMech army the same way I would face an Orc army, or a Demon army, or another Space Marine army, you know? When I go into a game, because of my experience, because of my practice, I feel better prepared, and I'm able to respond to what they have. Does it mean I'm automatically going to win? No. But then again, no one automatically wins, you know what I mean? Even Michael Jordan lost a few games. Lost a lot of games, you know? That's just the reality when you play a lot, is that you're going to have losses, you know what I mean? And as you get better, as you become better, you end up having better records, and you end up winning more games than you lose because of that experience, because of your practice. And that's not to say that you have to practice the same list over and over again, though I would recommend that if you're going to a bigger tournament to play the same list over and over again so you know that list innately, but play with the same army over and over again. You know what I mean? So if you go in there and you're developing a Dark Angels list, and you're developing a Dark Angels army, play with your Dark Angels over and over again. Don't just play one game and then sell them for the next new hotness that comes out, and then never know how to play that list either before you sell it for the next new hotness, you know? Running for the next new hotness, you're never going to get better. You're not going to become a better player, because all the armies play differently, and they all interact differently, so you're never actually going to know what any of your armies can do if you just keep jumping from army to army, you know? I didn't get my second army until I had played the crap out of my Dark Angels, you know? And once I'd done that, I knew that I could go on and move on to play a different army, because I had learned what the Dark Angels could do, and I could make lists with what the Dark Angels could do pretty regularly and pretty effectively, you know, because of my experience with them and knowing what the units can do and knowing what the effectiveness of different models were and how they interacted with other enemy depending upon what I was facing. Because once you know that, you can make a list that works really well, which is what I've been doing. You know, people talk about, you know, tailoring lists. Well, I tailor my list for my battle reports, but I tailor my lists so that they provide a good game. You know, sometimes I'm better at it than other times, but I've gotten pretty good at the fact that I can look at my opponent's army and at their list and be like, all right, well, you know what? If I bring this, I think we should have a fun game. And we do. We almost always have a fun game. You know, there have been times when I've done better job than others at balancing out, and sometimes I do way better than I expected. Other times they do way better than I expected. But at the end of the day, because of my experience and my innate knowledge of what my army does and what my units do through interaction and through practice, I'm able to put together lists that play well with others because of that knowledge, because of that practice, and because of the fact that I've had experience with everything in my codex, so that I better understand what my codex can do. And that kind of leads into my next recommendation, which is make your own lists. You know, I know it's very tempting to go onto the internet and see which lists won the LVO, or which lists are most talked about on DACA, or which lists are being touted on 40K competitive. But if you're making your own lists from scratch, you're going to have a better understanding of what your army can do, and you're going to have more of a connection to your army. Because everything that gets put into that list, you put there for a reason. And you don't have to figure out why it's in that list. And you don't have to figure out how it interacts with things, because you know. Because you built it and you put it in there. You know? And doing so gets you a better understanding of what your army can do, so that later, if you do see a cool list, you can tweak it yourself. And that's kind of what I did. You know, I saw a lot of Ravenwing lists, and I saw a lot of Skyhammer lists, and I was like, you know what? I think these guys would work well together. I think they would be cool together. I think they have a lot of synergy with what they can do. And I tweaked it so that I made my own Skyhammer Ravenwing list. You know what I mean? And I go with null deployment, which is fun. It's I definitely don't do that when I'm just hanging around with friends, because it can get kind of frustrating to play against. But if I'm in a tournament, I'm trying to win. But I'm not a dick about it. You know, I do it, and they know what it is, and I'll laugh, and we'll have fun, and we'll enjoy ourselves during the game. But because of my knowledge of what my armies did and what my units do, I was able to figure out that, yeah, if I bring a Skyhammer list, and I bring a Ravenwing list with a bunch of Black Knights, and, you know, a Dark Shroud, and some land speeders to shoot off and jump onto objectives, that they work really well together. So I've got that really strong glass hammer of the Skyhammer that comes in, and then I've got my Ravenwing that comes in turn 2 to help support them and jump on objectives and respond to how the enemy worked going in there. And that creates a very strong synergy. And I learned that synergy by making my own lists. You know, I didn't find that list online. And even what I have in those different lists are very different than a lot of the other ones that you're going to see online. You know, there's not a whole lot of similarity between what my Skyhammer is versus other people's Skyhammer. You know what I mean? Yeah, Grav is pretty popular, but a lot of Skyhammers out there put in a lot of Milta, and I've shied away from Milta in my Grav list in my Grav list. I shied away from Milta in my Skyhammer list because of my experience with them, and it was a lot more situational than Grav for me. You know, Grav can be situational, but it's less situational for me than multi-Meltas. Multi-Meltas were only ever really good if I was going up against someone with a lot of tanks and a lot of vehicles, because they work really well against vehicles. But if you've only got 4 multi-Meltas in there, you're only killing 4 guys if you're going up against a big squad. But the number of shots that Grav can shoot off, yeah, I'm only doing anything to vehicles on a 6, but then they're also immobilizing. And that trade-off for me seemed worth it. So because of my experience, because of what I've been doing with them, I was able to go into the games and actually know what my list did. And I created my own list. And that made me a better player. I do much better with my own list than I've ever done with any list that I've tried to copy and paste off the internet. Because of the fact that I am able to tailor the list to how I like to play. And I'm able to tailor the list to how I feel like they play on the table for me. And it creates a stronger coherency between me and my list, and makes me for a stronger player. And it also lets me understand what my army can do better if I'm making my own list, because I've come to what I've got for my list that I'm actually going to be taking to the Alaska States tournament soon through trial and error and through experience that I've gone out there and played with. And being able to come into the game knowing what my list can do, knowing what my army can do, is super beneficial. And I think it's super helpful. So yeah, those are just a few things that I think can help us to make us better gamers, you know? And I think the main overarching thing that combines all of these things is to truly enjoy this hobby for all it has and all of its different aspects. You know, I really recommend that the hyper-competitive guys who are just in there to play with their, you know, that just treat this like a competitive board game, I really recommend going out and reading a novel. I really recommend reading the fluff at the beginning of that codex that you may have skipped over going to your formations. I really recommend just watching a few videos on YouTube to better understand what it is that the Warhammer world and universe provides. Because doing so, you're going to enjoy the game more. And for those of you who have only ever read games and have only ever read novels, have never really done anything with the hobby and game aspect of it, go buy a pack. Go buy a start collecting box. It's less than $100, you know, and I know that's not necessarily in everyone's budget, but for most people, less than $100, you have some models. And it makes it so much more visceral than just reading about them in a book. You know, you can go out there and you can create that squad that you followed through a series of books to whatever dimension you want. You know what I mean? Put whatever weapons you want on them. Just have fun, and then you have a visceral, tangible object to go along with the what you're enjoying about enjoying about this intellectual property that is Warhammer 40,000. And for those of you out there who go and read the books, you build your armies, you take them to the game store, and then you trounce the newbies, and you gloat about your game, and you put people down for having a different opinion, put the salt away and see how much more you enjoy this game when people don't just turn their back when they see you coming into the game store, or how much that people actually respond to your messages on Facebook. You know, you attract way more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. And you're going to attract way more friends with a friendly disposition and a low sodium diet than you are going to with screaming matches and belittling others. Because in the end, being right never really trumps having fun when it comes to hobbies. So that's what I would recommend. And if you can put it all together and be a friendly guy who has an army that's painted, who makes his own lists, that innately knows his rules, and that knows the back history of what their army can do and what their army has done, and doesn't have any preconceived prejudices about what happens on the board before they play it, you're going to have a much more enjoyable experience in this hobby than if you didn't do those things. And in the end, we put so much time and effort and money into this hobby that we really do want to gain the most out of it. And we want to have the best... I forgot about painting this guy. We want to have the best to come out of this hobby for us. You know? Because if we're going to put all that effort in that, we want to see something from it. You know? And if you go out and you put more time and effort into this game, you're going to enjoy it a lot more if you follow those kind of rough guidelines that I talked about. And the more we get out of it, the more it makes all the time and effort and money that we put into this worth it, you know? And you're free to do whatever you want. If you really don't want to learn about the lore and you're just in it for gaming, you don't have to read. You know, nothing's stopping you from reading. Or nothing's making you read. I just feel like it would probably enhance your enjoyment of the game if you gave it a shot. I also think that if you go into the game with an open mind, you can go on the internet and scream at newbies all you want. You can scream at complete strangers all you want, but you're not going to enjoy the hobby as much as if you just chilled out, gave yourself a rest and let someone else be right for a second. You know what I mean? Because if someone else is right, who gives a crap? That doesn't affect you. Doesn't make you less of a person because you weren't right, Or if someone's wrong and they're being a jerk, just let it be. Just move on. It's not worth it. It's really never worth it. And that's general advice on the internet. Just in general. That doesn't even necessarily have to be specifically about this, but it seems to be pretty prevalent on the internet, people screaming at each other over rules differences and army lists and whatever. And I think that if you just let it go, you're going to enjoy this way more. So, yeah, and like I said, take and leave whatever you want. If you don't want to paint an army, you don't have to paint an army. I just think it would help, If you don't want to read the fluff, don't read the fluff. But I just feel like it would help. And, and taking the time to understand your opponent, you don't have to. They can just be the enemy that you trounce. But I feel like it's worth taking a second to appreciate them as a person and as a friend and see where that leads. So, those are my recommendations. Those are just some thoughts that I've had on how to be a better gamer. They're recommendations that come from real life experience. They're recommendations that come from from my own experience, and I've seen how it's enhanced how I play. You know what I mean? And I've seen the effects, especially the effects of painted armies that it's had on my local scene, because a lot more people have been putting together painted armies, because some of the bigger tournaments up here, so like the Alaska States, Battlezone Ursa, Alaska Battle Brothers, they've required painting for these bigger tournaments, for these bigger competitions. So people have been putting together painted armies because of it. And people have been putting together painted armies to come onto my channel. And just seeing the fact that a lot more armies are coming painted to even the local tournaments that don't have a painting requirement has been wonderful. And it's been enjoyable. Seeing painted armies on the table really adds a level of excitement. You know what I mean? And it adds a level of engagement for a lot of people when it comes to this game and it comes to the hobby that we do. So give it a shot before you judge it. Give it a shot. Have fun. Enjoy this hobby. This is a really rich and a very unique hobby that we have that I don't think you see a lot of in many others. Even other wargaming, you don't see, there's not 30 years worth of fluff history in War Machine. You know what I mean? Even historical gaming, it's like, yeah, they've got a whole lot of history with that, but it doesn't have quite the openness that our game has, because theirs is taking place in the 41st millennium. You know what I mean? And the 82nd Airborne did specific things during World War II. What did the Carcharodons actually do? I mean, there's some fluff about what they've done, but there's nothing to say that what they actually did or didn't do. You know what I mean? And you don't have to go. You can just go into it and be like, this is the story that I'm telling. And you can forge your own narrative in a way that you can't with historical gaming. And you can tap the resources that are available that you don't see in other war games like War Machine or Infinity. They're good games, they're fun games, but they don't quite have the depth of development and the depth of narrative that Warhammer does. And that's a reason that we play what we do. and there's a reason that we invest the time and effort and money that we do into this game, is because of all those different aspects. You know what I mean? And if that doesn't really appeal to you, then, you know, those are the strengths that Warhammer brings to the table, honestly, above most other wargaming or nerdtivities, is that depth and breadth of engagement that you can have with the hobby. So if you're not fully engaged with all of those, I feel like you're doing yourself a disservice. And I think that for nothing else, it can really enhance your ability to enjoy the hobby and enjoy what it is that we do, and enjoy what it is that you do personally. So in your own time, in your own effort, you can enjoy it. And I'm not, you know, there are certain things like not being a dick is going to help other people enjoy the hobby as well. But it's going to help you enjoy the hobby. So all of these things I talk about, all of these efforts that are worth taking, they can help other people too. But the main aim of all of that is for you to personally have a better time with this hobby and enjoy the hobby more and enjoy the game more, and to better be able to get something out of the time and effort and money that you put into this hobby. So that's kind of that's what this was all about, was finding ways to enhance your ability to find enjoyment, to find value, based upon the amount of effort and everything that we put into this. So why don't we continue this conversation down below in the comments? Let me know what you think. Do you think I'm completely off base? Do you think I'm right on target? Do you have other ideas on ways that people can become better gamers, that can enhance the way they enjoy this game? You know, let me know down below, and you know, and let's practice what I said. Let's keep it chill and low sodium. Don't yell at each other. That doesn't help anything, and I don't want this. You know, I don't want the comment section of my videos to turn into 4chan. I don't think that's necessarily worth it. So, yeah, let me know down below what you guys think. Do you think I'm right? Do you think I'm wrong? Do you think I'm completely off base? Do you think I'm on base but could be different? Tell me. And also, let me know what really makes this hobby worth it for you. You know, tell me your stories. Do you really just really like painting models? And if that's true, then why do you paint Warhammer models versus anything else? Let me know. That wasn't like questioning why your motives. It was just, I would like to know why you chose this versus that. You know, why do you, if you're only in it for gaming, then why do you choose to play Warhammer versus playing War Machine or Infinity or any of the other wargaming systems that are out there? And if you're in it for just the fluff, then why have you chosen this, you know, this universe of fluff versus any other universe of fluff? Because there's a lot of them out there that you could just be reading books from. You don't have to read this. But why do you? And let me know. Let me know down in the comments below why it is that you do this hobby and how you think that people can enhance their enjoyment of this hobby. But yeah, so I hope you guys have all enjoyed this. I certainly have, and I've really been enjoying the kind of back and forth and the conversations that we've been having in the comments section. And I'm glad you guys have been enjoying this too. And I hope you guys have been getting some painting done. And I hope the new added paint cam has been effective. I know a lot of you guys have said you really liked it. And I hope to continue to enhance it. I got a little bit closer this time. I'm hoping that I'm still trying to dial it in and figure out how it works and eventually have it something even better. So, yeah. Keep the conversation going. Let me know what's going on down below, and let other people know about this. You know, share it. Let them see the kind of conversation we had, so that they can also enjoy it and join in on a conversation. So I hope you guys have all enjoyed it. I have been Phil, the Glacial Geek, as always, and of course, until next time, have fun.